Who do you think is stronger, Ayanokoji or Sakayanagi? That answer might just surprise you. Right away, you get a glimpse into Sakayanagi's past, as she's being led through the White Room. This is the facility that's specifically designed to create geniuses, and it's where she witnessed Ayanokoji absolutely destroying his opponents in the game of chess. Presently, Chabashira-sensei enters into the classroom to announce the final special exam of the year. Each class must come up with 10 different events along with their rule sets, and of course, the school will verify the fairness of these events. On testing day, each class will then select 5 of their events for the exam. Then from the pool of 10 events total, only 7 will be chosen at random to be used. Each class will need to select a commander who will be able to intervene in these events as specified within their rules. Said commander will be rewarded bonus points upon victory, however they will be expelled upon defeat. Chabashira explains their opponent will be decided via a raffle, and breaks down the reward system for this exam. Horikita is then handed a paper copy of the rules, which states that each student is only allowed to participate in one single event. You'll then notice Harada, who's become a zombie ever since Yamauchi was expelled. Ike then wonders how Ayanokoji received so many praise votes during the bonus exam, prompting Horikita to explain that it was Sakayanagi's plan to give Class C's protection point to a subpar student. Due to this protection point, Ayanokoji actually volunteers to become the class's commander, but Shinohara speaks out against this idea, though nobody else is willing to take the risk of being expelled, so it falls on Ayanokoji. Guys, I'm proud to admit that I've finally become an official anime YouTuber, because Raid Shadow Legends is the sponsor of this video. I'm sure most of you are aware that Raid Shadow Legends is a mobile turn-based strategy game, but did you realize this month will mark their 3-year anniversary? From the very beginning, raids contained a ton of heroes, which they've only increased over time. This past year, they even added in an entirely new faction of badass-looking warriors known as the Shadowkin. Though once you get your party assembled, you're gonna need a challenge, so they've introduced the Doom Tower, which contains 120 levels worth of content. Then if that's not enough, you can even attempt to challenge the newest clan boss, the Hydra. Now, to celebrate the 3-year anniversary, Raid is giving away loads of free content. We're talking new champions, artifacts, tournaments, and even a fully personalized video showcasing every player's Raid journey and achievements. So with all that being said, here's what you need to do. If you've never played before, then use the QR code on screen or click the link in the description to gain $40 worth of free content, including the 3 free champions, Mizuracord, Tiger Soul, Romario, plus 10 Magic XP brews, 10 Force XP brews, and 10 Spirit brews. But what's that? You're a veteran player? Well, all new and existing players can use promo code 3YearsRaid to receive nearly $25 worth of birthday gifts. Once again, a big thank you to Raid Shadow Legends for sponsoring this video. After school, Horikita holds a class meeting, which Harada completely ignores. Michan chases after him as Ayanokoji heads off to a meeting for the commanders. Upon arrival, he immediately realizes that all 4 commanders have a protection point at their disposal, which means that nobody will be getting expelled due to this exam. They run a raffle, which gives Class D the option to select their opponent, and Kaneda immediately chooses Class B. Everyone is completely shocked, except for Ayanokoji, who called in a few favors to ensure this would happen. Now, later on that evening, Kei arrives to Ayanokoji's dorm, and she's concerned that this meetup isn't very secretive. He mentions that Hashimoto already knows they're working together, and asks for information about the class. After telling him everything he wanted to know, Kei begins to pout, as this all could have been handled over the phone. Ayanokoji stops her from leaving, and she turns around filled with excitement because today is her birthday. Ayanokoji bought her an expensive necklace, which she openly dislikes, seriously hurting Ayanokoji's feelings. He offers to take back the necklace, but instead she stuffs it into her bag, leaving behind a very confused teenage boy. The next day during lunch, you see the Ayanokoji group discussing the special exam. Yukimura states that Class A has been spying on them during their meetings, so Hasebe thinks they should retaliate somehow. Next, they talk about Classes B and D, and the group unanimously agrees that Class B will be the victor. After class, Horikita holds yet another meeting where Harada once again leaves the room. Some girls attempt to chase after him, but are stopped by Horikita, who asks everyone to come up with a single event that they could easily win at. Koenji confidently responds with,
"I'm the best at everything."
She assumes that means they can count on him to win during this exam. However, that all depends on if he cares or not. Upon arriving to class the following day, Harada is invited to have lunch with Michan, but he lashes out, calling her annoying. Kei immediately states that was uncalled for, and Harada retaliates by threatening to reveal her past. That evening, they have another class meeting, which Harada and Koenji both skip out on. Yukimura immediately brings up that Class A is spying, so they create a group message to discuss the important details. To Horikita's dismay, Michan excuses herself to chase after Harada, so Ayanokoji volunteers to retrieve her. On his way there, though, he bumps into Hashimoto, who straight up admits to spying on their class. Ayanokoji catches up to find Michan staying a safe distance from Harada. He gives her a few words of encouragement before returning back to class alone. On his way to school the next day, he encounters Hoshinomiya-sensei. He tries to keep some personal space between them, but she just keeps inching closer and closer. She believes there to be a severe lack of romance this year and tangents off into a story about two angry roommates. Ayanokoji assumes she's actually referring to herself and Chabashira-sensei, who just arrived, putting an end to this conversation. The Ayanokoji group is headed out for lunch when they overhear Class B angrily complaining. Ichinose asks the group to join them and proceeds to explain that Class D has been mildly harassing them. She goes on to say that her plan is to just not retaliate, and she asks the group to please keep all of this quiet. Now, sometime later, Ayanokoji pulls Kushida aside to ask for a favor. He assumes she's still mad at Horikita for hurting her reputation, but he goes ahead and asks for information about the class anyway. She refuses, claiming that Horikita isn't the reason, but he doesn't believe her. 'Tis the weekend that White Day has arrived, meaning that Ayanokoji has multiple presents to deliver. However, his anxiety gets the best of him, so he takes the easy way out, placing the gifts in everyone's mailboxes. Though while doing so, he runs into Ichinose, who for some reason can't look him in the eye. It's Monday when Ayanokoji randomly bumps into Manabu and Tachibana. He takes this opportunity to ask what his issue is with Horikita. Manabu explains that Horikita has an unhealthy obsession with trying to mimic her older brother, when in reality, she just needs to focus on herself. Ayanokoji points out that she has been making progress, and Manabu states that her potential even exceeds his own. Ayanokoji promises to make that potential reality, before asking if Manabu and Tachibana are in a relationship. Manabu rejects this, asking about Ayanokoji's love life, followed by him saying that he'd trust Ayanokoji to date Horikita. Chabashira just announced the 10 events put forward by Class A, and almost all of these include minimal commander intervention, with the exception being chess. Ayanokoji believes that Sakayanagi will use the chess event to have a direct contest with him. He, however, turns out to be the only person in this class with any chess experience, meaning that he will be forced to train someone for this event. In between classes, Yukimura brings up his idea to get information about Class A. Horikita says it'll be very difficult, prompting Yukimura to reveal his plan to get information from Katsuragi. In return, they'll offer Katsuragi an IOU good for 20 million private points in the future. She, however, feels this plan would never work out and walks away. Yukimura kicks the wall out of frustration and asks Ayanokoji for assistance with his scheme. It's around 6 p.m. that evening when Ayanokoji receives a call from Horikita, asking him to come to her room. He agrees and enters inside, immediately realizing he's fallen for a trap. She forces him to sit down, saying that dinner will be ready in just a few minutes. While eating, she hands him a notebook and orders him to read it, as payment for eating her food. He opens it to find detailed information about the class, even going as far to say which students are best suited for which events. Ayanokoji is extremely grateful that she's compiled this information, and then offers to train Horikita how to play chess. Ayanokoji then threateningly thanks her for the meal before heading back to his dorm. Sometime later, Yukimura and Ayanokoji go to meet up with Katsuragi in secret. Yukimura asks that Katsuragi throw his events, and to disclose some information on Class A. In return, he promises to give Katsuragi 20 million points at an unknown time in the future. Needless to say, Katsuragi absolutely tears apart Yukimura's half-assed plan. He then agrees to help Class C without any compensation. He tells them the 5 events most likely to be picked, and he even agrees to throwing his events if possible. Next, you see Horikita attempt to confront Harada, only to be completely ignored. This seriously damages the class's morale, except for Michan, who chases after him. Ayanokoji follows to find Harada attempting to walk away, with Michan holding onto his arm. Harada shakes himself free, which in turn knocks Michan to the ground. Koenji then waltzes into the mix, stating that it would be best if Harada would just drop out. Harada attacks Koenji, who flawlessly catches his hand. Koenji orders him to help Michan up off the ground, but Harada couldn't care less. Koenji then graciously swoops Michan up into his arms, as he forcefully carries her back to the dorms. As soon as she enters into the elevator, Ayanokoji asks why Koenji decided to intervene. He claims it was because Harada has become an annoyance, and then asks Ayanokoji not to make him participate in this exam. After this encounter, Ayanokoji sets out to have a discussion with Harada, and is immediately met with pushback. He relentlessly pokes his nose into Harada's past, learning that during middle school, Harada got sick and tired of bullying, and began to beat the shit out of literally anyone who stepped out of line. Then Ayanokoji's suspicions come to light as Harada blames himself for Yamauchi's expulsion. Ayanokoji is well aware that Harada is not at fault in the slightest. However, he chooses to ruthlessly blame the entire incident on Harada. He tells him that a good leader like Ichinose would have come up with 20 million points in order to save a classmate, and Harada breaks down, bawling his eyes out. Ayanokoji instructs him to keep trying and moving forward, because the rest of the class is counting on him. Then it's the very next morning that Harada confidently strides into class, bowing deeply and apologizing for his behavior. The day has finally come for Ayanokoji to face off against Sakayanagi. Horikita offers him some words of encouragement, to which he confidently responds with, "Nobody can beat me." He makes his way to the command room and finds Ichinose and Sakayanagi waiting outside. They banter for a while before finally hearing the sound of footsteps. They're completely shocked to see Ryun turn the corner in Kanada's place. He explains their commander just so happened to be absent today, so he's come to fill in. This unexpected turn of events has Ichinose physically shaking as the 4 of them make their way inside. The competing pairs are immediately separated, and they sit down at computers to select their 5 events. Katsuragi's information does turn out to be accurate, and the first event to be randomly chosen is 5v5 basketball, with the commanders being allowed to make a single substitution. Ayanokoji chooses not to put Pseudo on his team, which makes this a hard-fought battle for Class C. At halftime, they are only ahead by a single point, so Ayanokoji uses his 1 substitution to add Pseudo into the game. Class A, however, was holding back during the first half, and now they begin playing seriously, even giving Pseudo a run for his money. They're even beginning to taunt Pseudo, but he manages to keep his cool and bring home the victory for Class C. The second round is 1 vs 1 typing, another event put forth by Class C. Sotomura brings home the victory, moving us to the third event, an 8 vs 8 English test. Ayanokoji doesn't even try, and instead uses this as an opportunity to get a bunch of his lower performing classmates out of the way. Event number 4 is a 7 vs 7 math test, and Ayanokoji puts together a very solid team, though they do end up losing, making the overall score 2-2. Next up is 2 vs 2 Flash Mental Arithmetic, which includes Koenji and Katsuragi. Class C's problem child chooses not to answer the questions, leaving his partner to battle on her own. Now, question 10 was so difficult that nobody could get the answer correct, except for Ayanokoji and Sakayanagi. That is, until Koenji gives the correct answer. That being said though, Class A wins this event, as Sakayanagi explains that she threatened to expel Katsuragi's friends if he didn't take this seriously. Switching to the battle between Ryun and Ichinose, you witness Class D win a karate match for the 5th event, putting the score at 2-3 in Ryun's favor. A large part of this upset has been due to a bunch of Class B students getting mysteriously sick the day of the exam. The 6th event turns out to be 1 vs 1 judo, and Ryun confidently selects Albert to represent his class. Ichinose can't bring herself to choose a sacrifice, so the time runs out, and Mishima-sensei declares Class D to be the winner. There is one event left, but Class D is up 2-4, meaning they've already won this special exam. You must go back 2 weeks prior to see how Class D's victory came to fruition. Ishizaki straight up begged Ryun for help, but he only instructed them to challenge Class B. A while later, you find Hiyori, Ishizaki, and Ibuki hanging out in a karaoke room. Ryun arrives 4 hours late, stating they will select 5 fighting events and set the rules as the winner stays in the ring. This means that they'll only need 1 strong person for each event in order to claim victory. On top of this, they will be intimidating Class B over the course of this exam, and will even end up drugging some of them with a laxative. Then the final key for their victory is for Ryun to become Class D's commander the day of the exam. Jumping back to the present, you find that Class C won the archery event, tying the score 3-3. The final event is rolled and selected to be a 1 vs 1 chess match, which allots each commander with 30 minutes to take control of the game. Sakayanagi couldn't be happier with this sequence of events, as Hashimoto and Horikita face off against each other. They were each taught by their very skilled commanders, but Horikita slowly begins to take the lead. Sakayanagi exclaims she'd love to watch this game play out, but she steps in taking control. Ayanokoji chooses to observe for just a moment before taking control himself. The pieces whip across the board as each commander is impressed with the other. There's a lot of back and forth until Sakayanagi finally is forced to pause, declaring,
"This is the end,"
before suddenly turning the tables on Ayanokoji. He frantically thinks for the best move possible, as his time steadily ticks away. Horikita mutters a cry for help, just as Ayanokoji finds his path to victory. He types in his desired move, but for some reason it takes longer than normal for Horikita to execute it. Sakayanagi praises him on being the strongest opponent she's ever faced, before winning the match a few moves later. So Ayanokoji lost the match, making the score for this special exam 3-4, with Class A as the winner. Mr. Director then enters into the room, explaining that Class D triumphed over Class A, which now means that Ayanokoji's class will once again be demoted to Class D. Everyone is then forced out of the room, where Sakayanagi asks if Ayanokoji let her win. He says of course not, however the director cuts into the conversation, explaining that he interfered in the match, changing one of Ayanokoji's moves. He had to do this because a certain someone didn't follow her orders, and even gave Ayanokoji a protection point. Sakayanagi declares that Tsukashiro will pay for this, as she watches him walk away. At this point, it's just the two of them outside, and Sakayanagi asks to redo the chess game. They make their way to the library and reset the board, as it was just before the director interfered. Ayanokoji does in fact win this game, stating it was mainly due to Horikita giving him a lead. Sakayanagi finally acknowledges Ayanokoji as a genius, before sadly explaining that from now on, she will need to keep her distance from him. These two equally skilled chess players then slowly walk back to the dorm, side by side.